Ray Franz goes on in his analysis of the 1975 debacle. When the 1970s arrived, the build-up of expectation kept on. The October 8th, 1971 awake spoke yet again of 6 periods of toil and labor, followed by a 7th Sabbath period of rest, and said, quote, "So as we draw close to the completion of 6,000 years of human existence during this decade, there is the thrilling hope that a grand Sabbath of rest and relief is indeed at hand." And then there was a chart. Some of you will remember seeing a chart which had the dates 1914 and the end of the 7,000 years, and on the chart was the phrase millennial reign of Christ Jesus with a question mark after it. But I remember the buzz at the time as we looked at the chart in 1971, the year I was baptized. All of us young ones who were studying at the time, and there were at least a dozen in my circle, in the next year or so were speculating as to how certain we could be about this date. Franz goes on, all these statements are clearly designed to foment and build up hope anticipation. They are not designed to calm or diffuse a spirit of excited expectation. True, most were accompanied by some qualifying statement to the effect that, quote, "we are not saying positively," or are not pointing to a specific date, and that we do not know the day and the hour. Such things were occasionally said. But it must be remembered, Franz goes on, that the organization was not a novice in this field. Its whole history, from its very inception, was one of building up people's hope in certain dates, only to have those dates pass with the hope unrealized. In past cases, the publications of the Society subsequently sought to place the responsibility for any disillusionment on the receivers, not the givers of the information, as inclined to expect too much. Surely then, the responsible men of the organization should have realized the danger, realized what human nature is, realized how easily great hopes can be excited. Yet, when carefully avoiding any explicit prediction that a specific date would see the start of the millennium, those responsible men approved the use of the phrases "within relatively few years," "the immediate future," "within a few years at most," "only a few years at most." These are all direct quotes, along with "the final few years." All of these used by the Watchtower and Awake magazines with reference to the beginning of the millennial reign, and all in a context that included the date 1975. Do such words mean anything, or were they used loosely or carelessly? Are people's hopes and plans and feelings something to be toyed with? Yet the Watchtower of August 15th, 1968 even implied that one should be careful about putting too much weight on Jesus Christ's own cautionary words. This is what that Watchtower said, quote, "One thing is absolutely certain. Bible chronology reinforced with fulfilled Bible prophecy shows that 6,000 years of man's existence will soon be up, yes, within this generation. This is therefore no time to be indifferent and complacent. This is not the time to be toying with the words of Jesus, that, quote, concerning that day and hour nobody knows, neither the angels of the heavens nor the Son, but only the Father. To the contrary, it is a time when one should be keenly aware that the end of this system of things is rapidly coming to its violent end. Make no mistake, it is sufficient that the Father himself knows both the day and the hour." So when we analyze all these quotes and these direct phrases from Watchtower and Awake and from the books, would any of us really refer to such statements as wise or discreet? I think of Matthew 12, where Christ says, "Men will render an account for every unprofitable saying that they speak on Judgment Day." How many unprofitable sayings do we have embedded just in these few pages of quotes that Ray Franz alludes to? I remember among our group at the time, there was a lot of excitement, and most of the people I was hanging around with were either full-time pioneers or part-time pioneers. I think at one time we had 30 to 50 either full-time or part-time pioneers working in the same congregation of about 100 people. This is in the west end of Toronto, around 1974 to 75. And the buzz was, of course, about what was going on in downtown Toronto at the time. The CN Tower, which was to be the tallest structure, the tallest freestanding structure in the world when it was completed. It was scheduled to be completed within, I think, that year, a year of the expectation of Armageddon. And I remember the buzz going around, will they have time to complete it before Armageddon arrives? Franz goes on, how could a faithful and discreet slave possibly say this? In effect, say that, true, my master said thus and so, but don't make too much of that. To the contrary, realize that what I'm telling you should be the guiding force in your life. Some of the most direct statements came from the International Headquarters Service Department, which produces a monthly paper called Kingdom Ministry, a paper which goes only to witnesses and not to the public. The March 1968 issue urged getting into full-time preaching activity. That's pioneer service. And it said, in view of the short period of time left, we want to do this as often as circumstances permit. Just think, brothers, there are only about 90 months left before 6,000 years of man's existence on earth is completed. And then the 1974 May edition of the Kingdom Ministry said this, reports are heard of brothers selling their homes and property and planning to finish out the rest of their days in this old system in the pioneer service. Certainly this is a fine way to spend the short time remaining before the wicked world's end. I do recall that there was a lot of commendation of brothers who were forestalling health care, advanced education, all in the name of speeding up the work before the end came. And now, in the next few paragraphs, Ray Franz gets into the statistical significance of this excitement. Quite a number of witnesses did just that, Franz says. Some sold their businesses, gave up jobs, sold homes, farms, moved with their wives and children to other areas to serve where the need was greater, counting on having sufficient funds to carry them through 1975. Others, including some older persons, cashed in insurance policies or other valuable certificates. Some put off surgical operations in the hope that the millennium's entrance would eliminate the need for these. When 1975 passed and their funds ran out or their health worsened seriously, they now had to try to cope with the hard realities and rebuild as best they could. What was the thinking within the governing body during this time? Some of the older men on the body had personally experienced the failed expectations of 1914, 1925, as well as the hopes excited in the early 1940s during World War II. The majority, from my observation, took a wait-and-see attitude. They were reluctant to call for restraint. Big increases were taking place. And then he asked us to consider the record of baptisms. As I said before, the average baptism number for the 60s right up until 1966 was about 60 to 65,000. And then suddenly in 1967 the numbers start to exponentially increase. So by the time you get to 1975, nearly 300,000 baptisms per year. Now France sums that up. From 1960 until 1966, the rate of increase had diminished to a near standstill. But following 1966, when 1975 was highlighted, there came a phenomenal period of growth. During the years 1975 to 1974, while I was serving on the governing body, I do not recall hearing any strong expressions of concern from body members about the excited expectations that had been generated. I would not pretend that I did not initially feel stirred myself in 1966, when the book Life Everlasting and Freedom of the Sons of God came out with its glowing picture of the nearness of a millennial jubilee. Nor would I claim to have no part whatsoever in the early part of the campaign to focus attention on the target date 1975. But each passing year from 1966 on made the ideal seem more and more unreal. The more I read scriptures, the more the whole concept seemed out of line. It did not square with the statements of Jesus Christ himself. Statements such as, and then he quotes a few choice expressions from Jesus, concerning that day and hour nobody knows, neither the angels of the heavens nor the Son, but only the Father. Keep on the watch, therefore, because you do not know on what day your Lord is coming. On this account you too prove yourselves ready, because at an hour that you do not think to be it, the Son of Man is coming. Keep looking, keep awake, for you do not know when the appointed time is. It does not belong to you to get knowledge of the times and seasons which the Father has placed in his own jurisdiction. Those quotes from Matthew 24 and Mark 13 and Acts 1. In the next segment, we'll talk about the aftermath of the debacle.